First of all, talking about the problem of chronic pain and what happens to us when we suffer with chronic pain. Um, we reduce our activity, and as a result, we have physical wasting, muscle weakness, and joint stiffness that happens when we reduce our activity too much. Um, Unhelpful thoughts occur, and if we don't manage our unhelpful thoughts, we can become depressed, helpless, and anxious, and basically pessimistic, which affects areas of the body that we don't even think of. It affects the brain, the amygdala, the spinal cord, lungs, heart, liver, adrenal glands, kidneys, and gut. And as a result of repeated treatment failures, the same problems with our thoughts occurs. We lose jobs, and as a result, we have financial difficulties, family stress, and again, depression, helplessness, and anxiety. So next slide, please. And then importantly, the long-term use of painkillers and sedative drugs with the side effects that occur with those. Gastrointestinal problems, lethargy, and we don't often talk about this, but possible dependence on analgesics or painkillers. I had a friend recently with chronic pain who was in the hospital and left on opioids, which I thought was a mistake, but she spent quite a bit of time trying to get herself off opioids and eventually did. But in the meantime, she lost confidence in driving and gave away her car. And later, when she was able to manage her pain without opioids, she really was very sorry that she'd given away her car. So that's one example of what can happen. But all of what we've just discussed leads to excessive suffering. So what we're hoping to do is to manage our pain without excessive suffering. So next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about are strategies that we used in the pain management program. And normally, I would work with a physiotherapist. I'm certainly not a qualified physiotherapist, although I know more than I used to know. Exercising and stretching, extremely important. So my thought would be consult a physiotherapist if you're not sure with what you're suffering from, what are the right exercises for you. Once you've got a physical program in place, you want to practice most days of the week. Some people say 5 out of 7 days, whatever works for you, but make sure that you continue practicing. When you have a flare-up, as we all will have flare-ups because we all have autoimmune diseases, which have their ups and downs, cut down on the exercises and stretches, but don't stop. The physiotherapist that I used to work with suggested to people that they cut their program in half. So if you were walking a mile a day, then you might walk, say, half a mile a day or 500 kilometers. And find enjoyable ways to exercise. What works best for you? Some people love dancing. That's wonderful exercise. Some love to walk. Some love to swim. Um, I noticed recently where I went the swimming center I went to, that they were playing pickleball, and I thought, gosh, that looks like not too energetic form of tennis. So whatever you find that really works for you, you're more likely to do it, of course, if you do what you enjoy. So the next slide, please. Planning and pacing, really, really important. Well, for all of us, but particularly people who have chronic pain. A lot of people, and I know I've done this myself, go at things like a bull at a gate, work, 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 try and get everything done, and then kind of collapse and not be able to do anything for the rest of the day. And in fact, increase your level of chronic pain. So, planning and pacing are extremely important. So, what I'm going to suggest is that you set goals for each day and then set time for the tasks. I must say, I don't necessarily do this every day, but when I have a lot of things I want to accomplish, it works for me to set the time for each thing that I'm going to do, and write them down. The other thing that's helpful about that approach is if you have an unpleasant task, uh, you know that you've set aside 1 hour for the unpleasant task, and it's going to end in an hour. So I like to set the worst task, the most unpleasant one, first in the day. Um, that may work differently for different people. And when you're working on a task, particularly if you're sitting down at the computer or sitting down doing something where you remain still, you must move every 20 to 30 minutes. So there are programs, if you are working on the computer, there are programs that will actually give you a signal in the time that you've decided is the maximum time for you. I've never done that because I just automatically get up, but that seems to me like a thing that if you get absorbed in the task, that you could do that. And then check how your plan is working and modify it for yourself. So planning and pacing, I think not just for people with chronic pain, but for everybody, it's a helpful way to manage your day and eventually your life. Next slide, please, Swinda. And then mapping your time. This is a table that I took from Tal Ben Shahar's book, Happier. It's a very simple thing to do, but 4 columns. What is the activity? How much meaning is there in the task for you? How much pleasure does it give you? And how much time you spend on it each week? This is his example: spending time with the family, high level of meaning and pleasure, but not a lot of time. Working and volunteering at meetings, again, a higher meaning, not so much pleasure, 11 hours. And then watching TV, not much meaning, some pleasure, and 8.5 hours. And when I looked at this, I thought this is a really good way to work out what is really important for you to spend time on, what gives you meaning in your life. And not to spend too much time doing things that don't have meaning for you in your life. And the example here is watching TV. So the next slide, please, Swinda. Managing flare-ups. we all have to do this. Flare-ups just happen. We can't always work out why they do, but they happen. Important to stop and think. Have you been overdoing things? Make a plan. List things to try or avoid. And when the flare-up is over, work out why and plan for the future. I had a flare-up the other day. It just came out of the blue. I have no idea why it happened. And I think I slept all afternoon and I thought, oh gosh, what is happening here? The next day I was fine again. I don't know whether that's the way it works for other people, but you can't always figure out what has happened and why you're having a flare up. The other thing I think is important is making a plan when you know there's something really that you value in your life that you're going to need to do. For example, I had a client once who really valued Christmas. Christmas Day was a day when the whole family came. She loved to cook and make things like mince pies and turkeys and all of the Christmas events that many people enjoy. But she knew that that doing all this was going to give her a flare up. So what part of her plan was to pace herself, certainly, but although she tried to avoid medications, she took a couple of Panadol at the beginning of the day and another couple at lunchtime and another couple later on the day. So she worked out a plan where she could manage a really important day for her by pacing, planning the day, and taking some analgesics just for that day. Next slide, please, Swinda. And then desensitization, we haven't really talked about in the past. Acute pain can be useful and a warning. I mean, if you break a bone or you strain a muscle, you have acute pain, but not so with chronic pain. It's not useful when you have excluded life-threatening conditions. Excuse me. So what happens with people is that the chronic pain slows them down, and many of us then stop doing things that we enjoyed or that we know are going to be helpful to us because our chronic pain is standing in the way. So I think, first of all, recognizing that chronic pain is not going to go away for most of us, and that fear of pain is actually preventing us returning to what is important, what we value in our life. So desensitization is a technique that we can use. I really can't go into it now because of the time that's involved, but it's somewhat similar to meditation, except rather than say mindfulness meditation, we focus on the pain without an emotion. It's an exercise we really need to learn with an instructor, but many people find it extremely helpful. What we've worked on in the past in pain management research is looking at desensitization versus meditation, and both are equally helpful. So it's a matter of finding what works for you and it might be a technique that you would find helpful. So moving on, please, Swinda. So relaxation and meditation. I often hear people who like to smoke or to drink alcohol say, "Oh, I need to do this to relax." Relaxation is best not achieved through use of substances. We can do it with deep breathing. Probably most people have tried that. Yoga and Tai Chi are forms of movement meditation. And Tai Chi certainly has a research base behind it. Health New South Wales has focused on Tai Chi, researched the effectiveness of Tai Chi for chronic pain, and it's been found to be very effective. Yoga, of course, we know there's research there too. So both of those forms of movement we can use as stretching exercise, but also movement meditation. And then we think about different forms of meditation. Mindfulness, we've talked about that, and we've actually had lessons on that. And then focused or transcendental meditation, where the person focuses on an object, say a candle, or a sound such as Om. There's different forms of transcendental meditation, and sometimes we can do a kind of hybrid meditation to use mindfulness, but also some form of focus as well in the mindfulness meditation. And we can talk about that another time. But and then there's religious meditation. I remember once we had a nun in our class, a religious Catholic nun, who kind of got a little bit bent out of shape when we said, well, now we're going to learn meditation. And she said, I've been practicing this for 30 years. And, you can't teach me about meditation. In fact, she was a meditator. And what she did and her group did was to focus on a paragraph from the Bible. And that was the way she and her group meditated. So any form of meditation that you find works for you is good. And then progressive muscle relaxation. I really like that as a form of relaxation. And if in the future people would like to learn that, we could do that. Not something we can really go through now, but it involves tensing and relaxing various parts of the body. And at the end, there is generally, if you do it, if you practice, a lovely muscle relaxation. Okay, next slide, please, Swinda. Thought management. We talked a little bit about that when we talked about depression. Using a cognitive behavioral technique is very helpful. And again, we won't go into details about that because that is more than an hour in itself in learning some of these cognitive behavioral techniques. But it involves looking at negative thoughts and beliefs. An example of that was looking at, say, something like black and white thinking, or believing that the world should be fair, or believing that everything that is legal should be just. When we think about it very carefully, we know most of that is not true. And then noticing the feelings that go along with the unhelpful thoughts and beliefs. Feelings of sadness, sometimes feelings of anger, worry, anxiety. The moment that we come up with negative thoughts, unhappy thoughts, notice the feelings that go with the thoughts. Sometimes the feelings come first, and we have to try to figure out what it is we've been thinking when the feelings, the unhappy feelings occur. And then learning to modify thoughts in a rational way and recognizing the changes in our behavior when we are able to modify our thoughts. And sometimes it's very difficult for people. Other people can learn it relatively easy. And I always like to think about, we think of cognitive behavioral therapy as relatively new, and it is. It was developed in the 1950s. But there was a philosopher, Epictetus, who said, what we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow. Our life is the creation of our mind. And to me, he was the original cognitive behavioral therapist, because that is so true. So let's move on, please, Swinda. Oh, motivation. Motivation or demotivation is one of the most important factors in why we don't accomplish what we want to accomplish. We just become, and this goes very often with feeling depressed and anxious. We just think, oh, what's the use? It's not worth it. It's getting worse and worse. And you go on kind of a downward path. So it's important that we learn to motivate ourselves. Nobody else is going to do it for us. So deciding what you want to achieve, and that could be long-term goals. That could be what you want to achieve in a year or in some months or in a week. And once you've decided what you want to achieve, decide how it is you're going to break that down so that you can structure your day. Look at what you need to do now. Don't get bogged down in the thoughts of, oh, it's all too much. I'm never going to be able to accomplish that. No need to race to achieve your goals. And really important, don't wait until you're in the mood. If you wait till you feel that you're in the mood, you'll waste an awful lot of time. And I know we all do this. We all decide, oh, I'm just not going to bother today. I'm going to sit down and read a book or something. And at the end of the day, you won't have accomplished anything. Feelings of accomplishment are so important in making our moods lighter and just more elevated. Research has indicated that new habits take an average of 2 months practice. And that can vary between 18 and 254 days. So depending on what it is you're trying to achieve, for example, if you're trying to drink more water each day, that probably wouldn't be very difficult to achieve. But if you really want to increase your exercise and increase your strength by doing so, it may take you up to 6 months to achieve that. The important thing is that you know what you want to achieve and that you keep going. And going back to the second point here, structuring the day, structuring the week, so that you get done what you want to get done. Next slide, please, Swinda. And relationships. This is really, really important for all of us. Recognizing the effect of your chronic pain on others. One of the psychologists that I used to work with, Toby Newton-John, has done a lot of work on chronic pain and relationships and how relationships are affected. And if we don't manage chronic pain within the relationship, people lose their relationships sometimes. The spouse may leave, or the boyfriend or girlfriend may just decide this is not worth it. This person is in pain all the time and we can't do what we want to do. And I just don't want to stay in this relationship. So then accepting help, but maintaining your independence when you can. I had an aunt who recently died. She died at 108, and she had chronic pain, but she always maintained her independence until the very end. And I remember when I was driving her to the shops, she didn't like me to open the door and help her out of the car. She liked to open the door and get out of the car herself, which took her longer, but that was okay because she felt independent, and that was really important to her. I think that was part of how she managed to live such a long life. Communication, really, really important. Don't focus on your pain or your illness in your conversation. But on the other hand, don't close down. So rather than going into a very long description of what your chronic pain is doing or what your illness is doing, which can be very upsetting to others, can also be very boring to others, you can just say, well, look, I'm having a bad day today, and leave it at that. On the other hand, don't close down and say, oh, I'm fine, everything's all right, when people can see that actually you're not all right. So just communicating briefly that you're having a hard day is probably the most useful way to communicate with others, and especially in your close relationships. Asking for help when you need it, and not overdoing stoicism and say, oh, no, I can do it by myself. So it's kind of a fine line between being independent and asking for help when you need it. And very importantly, expressing your thanks when people are helpful and kind to you. That is so important, and sometimes we forget to do that. So next slide, sorry. So sleep. Very important for people who have chronic pain. And again, we could spend a lot of time on this, but we all are probably aware that sleep, the room in which we sleep, should be a comfortable room. It should be dark. So making sure that the shades on your windows really block out light. Making sure that the temperature is right. It's neither too cold nor too hot, or that you have enough blankets. Making sure that you don't drink uh, a lot, because if you drink heavily before you go to bed, you may go to sleep rather quickly, but you will wake up in about 4 hours, and you may find it very difficult to go back to sleep. Abnormal sleep, um, that that can happen with people who are shift workers. Um, Jet lag, we're probably all familiar with that. And there's a disruption of the circadian rhythm when that occurs. Um, so we're all aware of jet lag. We can all probably manage that because we know it's going to go away after we adjust to the new time zone that we're living in. But light is important. Blue light is detrimental, especially 2 hours before bed. No laptops or smartphones in the bedroom. In fact, the bedroom should really, the only activities in the bedroom should be sleep or sex. No computers, nothing else that is going to distract you and make you aware of activities that you would like to be doing, but you want to get out of bed to do. And then avoiding mental and physical stimulation 2 hours before bed. So don't go to the gym late at night and get your exercise then, because you will stimulate yourself. So it'll be, even though it's great to get exercise in, try to do it earlier in the day. And the other thing, and I find this really important, avoiding mental stimulation. So be careful of what you're reading before you go to sleep. If you're reading something that is really exciting, it may make it difficult to go to sleep. Or if you may read something rather horrifying, or go to a play, a movie that is going to excite you, just be very careful and be aware that that may affect your sleep. Next page, please, Linda. So, some of the things you can do, um, thought management, if you go to sleep uh, worrying about something, one of very useful thing to do is have a worry pad by the bed, just a scrap pad and pencil. And if there are thoughts that are worrying you, write them down, because the worries are going to be there in the morning. And if you've written them down, it somehow takes them out of your mind and onto the piece of paper, so that you know that what it is you're worrying about, you can take up again in the morning. Relaxation and or meditation, really good before you go to sleep. And sleeping pills are okay temporarily. Side effects we know are memory and daytime grogginess. Um, it's really important that you don't become reliant on sleeping pills. But I know, for example, if you have jet lag, you might find that a couple of nights of taking some mild sleeping pill could help you. And recognize that we don't necessarily catch up by sleeping in. It's better to go to bed earlier the next night. Next page, please, Swinda. And these are just some of the references that I thought you might find useful. I think Tal Ben-Shahar's book is not focusing on chronic pain, but it's a lovely book. And then the rest are references for you. Manage Your Pain, the pain book, focusing on most of what I've been talking about. And that's it.